treatment, water and sanitation. I believe Rotary has been doing something in that direction already. Basic education and literacy, economic development, cultural understanding and conflict resolution, very important these days, interpersonal communication, and caring for our natural environment. With regard to disease prevention and treatment, Burma has one of the poorest healthcare systems in the world, with tens of thousands of people dying yearly from chronic communicable diseases. Burma was ranked 190th among other countries in terms of its healthcare, almost the worst in the world. Burma has Southeast Asia's highest death rate for newborns, infants, and children under 5. AIDS kills an estimated 18,000 people a year, and the country remains one of the hardest in which to receive HIV treatment. Tuberculosis is at nearly triple the global rate, and Burma has the highest number of malaria-related deaths in the region. More than 90% of pregnant women and 70% of children in coastal and delta areas suffer from worm infestations, a major cause of malnutrition. The 2012 countdown to maternal and child health report documents insufficient progress on child health in Burma. The mortality rate for children aged 5 years and younger is 56 per 1,000 live births, and around 40% of all Burmese children younger than 5 years old are moderately stunted. There's an urgent need for better maternal health care. Without good health, children will be unable to benefit from education. And all this is happening in a resource-rich country that was once the envy of its neighbors. As I mentioned in the chapter entitled Pay As You Go in Letters from Burma, paradoxically, healthcare is ostensibly provided free of charge by the state. But in recent years, the contributions expected from the community have risen to such an extent that it is no longer possible to think of healthcare as free. By contributions, I do not mean just monetary donations made by the public towards healthcare projects, although such donations are not inconsiderable. I'm referring to the fact that government healthcare facilities now provide merely services, while patients have to provide almost everything else: medicines, cotton wool, surgical spirits, bandage, and even equipment necessary for surgery. Patients not only have to make their own arrangements for getting the necessary medical supplies, they also have to bribe the hospital staff in order to receive satisfactory service. It is not just doctors and nurses who have to be sweetened with gifts, but of course there are some doctors and nurses who are dedicated and do not ask for gifts from patients, but a lot of them do. Hospital orderlies also have to be paid if one's time as an invalid is to be passed comfortably. Apparently, it is a common practice for orderlies to neglect their cleaning duties until they are duly compensated. And they are also said to pay patients who have to be wheeled from one part of the hospital to another a rough ride until a requisite sum of money has exchanged hands. Then there are the doorkeepers and other administrative staff whose hands have to be greased to smooth the path of family members who need to go in and out at all hours to deliver necessary supplies. These are some of the problems that our people have to cope with. And while I'm talking about healthcare, I hope that there will be in the audience many who would like to contribute generously to our project to try to renovate the Rangoon General Hospital, that our public may get better healthcare, genuinely free healthcare. The rich now go to private institutions because there are private healthcare clinics and small private hospitals, but the large majority still have to depend on the state hospitals, which do not really provide free service. So the poorer you are, the poorer your health is bound to be. While nothing can excuse callousness in those who should be giving succor to the ill and dying, it cannot be ignored that the deterioration in state health care is largely the result of maladministration. One cannot expect grossly underpaid staff to be highly motivated, and particularly not when they are working with poorly maintained equipment in dilapidated, unhygienic surroundings. So the need to renovate the Rankin General Hospital as a start. There are indications that among those who cannot afford private health care, that is to say, the large majority of the population, there is an increasing tendency to rely on folk or traditional medicine rather than place themselves at the mercy of the state healthcare system. Water and sanitation. And this is where I think Rotary has been starting to work. Burma is one of the ASEAN member countries and is endowed with rich natural resources, including land that is easily cultivated and a favorable climate. Burma is a forest-clad, mountainous country with plateaus, valleys, and plains. We are endowed with abundant water resources. Industrial and domestic use of water accounts for only about 10% of total water use in Burma, while the agricultural sector is responsible for 90% of water use. The total utilization of the nation's water resources is only about 5% of the potential. However, with the increasing population and enhanced need for water for economic activities, there is increasing pressure on use of surface water and extraction of groundwater. Control and management of surface water and groundwater will therefore be crucial. The percentage of Burmese with access to safe drinking water and sanitation facilities is still very low when compared to global standards. Rural water supply activities started in Burma in 1952 to provide safe drinking water and to implement environmental sanitation works for the local populace. At present, with the assistance of international organizations, several water supply and sanitation projects are being implemented. So what we started working towards in 1952, we still have not yet achieved. With regard to basic education and literacy, like healthcare, education is another critical component for the long-term peace-building and nation-building processes. Much of what I have to say about this issue I borrowed from my message to students as recorded for Prospect Burma, as well as comments from my book, Letters from Burma. Education is the key to the future, particularly to the future of a country like Burma. The young people in Burma do not have the same educational opportunities available to those in other parts of the world. We have been left so far behind from years of military dictatorship that we have much to do simply to catch up with others. The poor quality of teaching in schools forces all parents who can afford the fees to send their children to private tuition classes, which can be crippling. Examinations provides teachers as well as employees of the education department with opportunities for lucrative business. Examination questions, advance information on grades achieved, and the marking up of low grades can all be obtained for a price. I think this is getting better, but this is how it has been for the last few decades. We depend on our young people to take us forward. Genuine education prepares the minds of young people to meet the challenges that may come to us in the future. Burma is facing many challenges now, and I would like our young people to be aware of this. They must understand that their help is needed now as much as it is needed in the future. I've often said that we are going through a most delicate and difficult transition to democracy. If the young people of Burma approach the problems of our nation with humanity and humility, they will be able to infuse our nation with a kind of spirit that will enable us to overcome all the difficulties that lie ahead. So for me, education is not simply a question of acquiring certificates and degrees. It is a question of acquiring the right attitude towards life and the right spirit with which to meet the challenges that our country will face. As I stressed during my address to the delegates at the International Labour Organization's conference in Geneva last year, I believe that vocational training linked to job creation is imperative if we are to safeguard the future by giving our youth the capacity to handle effectively the responsibility that will inevitably fall to them one day. We must help our young people so that they may be able to take over the task of nation building. Economic development. Despite significant natural resources, a large labour force, and our location in an area of dynamic economic growth, Burma is one of the poorest countries in Asia. In 2011, it ranked 149th out of 187 states in the Human Development Index, lagging behind all of our ASEAN neighbours in indicators for poverty, health, and education. The single biggest source of Burma's revenue is earnings from exporting natural gas. A large portion of these earnings is siphoned off into the pockets of powerful people. The credibility of the government will depend greatly on how quickly it moves to show that earnings from natural resource exports are being used for social development purposes. I have advocated for some time that Burma should sign up to international conventions like the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Again, in my address to the participants at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in 2012, I acknowledged that economic progress is dependent on more than fiscal and monetary measures that have been proposed for Burma by international financial institutions. Such measures will need to be upheld by both judicial and legislative reforms, which will guarantee that sound regulations and laws will be administered in a just and effective manner. We wish to create a political, social, and economic environment that will bring ethical, new, and innovative investment to our country. We would like to draw our blueprint for a sustainable new model economy with a view to the future needs of our global social and environmental concerns, woven into food, water, and energy needs. As I have said previously, foreign investment must help, not hurt, Burma's goal of moving towards full democracy. Any new investment that comes in because of the lifting of sanctions or suspension of sanctions should add to the democratic process rather than subtract from it. I would like to see a strong, effective energy policy in Burma, and this should be related to the kind of extractive investments that we invite in. Although we have taken some steps towards meeting these economic challenges, we are not yet at the point of a great transformation, but we have a rare and extremely precious opportunity to reach such a point. An important step that will take us nearer to a truly revolutionary breakthrough will be the inclusion of all relevant political forces in the electoral and legislative process of our country. That we are now participating on the world stage in events like the World Economic Forum is a sign of the positive changes that have been taking place in our country. I would like to appeal to all those who wish to promote the interests of Burma and other nations and societies struggling for peace and stability, development and prosperity to support us in our efforts to take the next crucial step that will enable us to bridge the gap between potential and fulfillment. Cultural understanding and conflict resolution is another topic in which people are very interested these days. Culture is an essential part of conflict and conflict resolution. The understanding of cultural heritage and cultural diversity and human creativity is a cornerstone for the process of peace building, social cohesion, and mutual understanding. We need to promote ethnic harmony in a country that is torn apart by various ethnic conflicts, to remove the roots of distrust and fear and hate. Interpersonal communication could help us in establishing harmony and understanding. Communication is key for the purpose of enhancing the quality of interaction and relationships between people. Poor communications often destroy relationships and escalate conflict. Communication breakdown may often lead to conflict. This in turn impacts our freedom, our democracy, and our way of life. There have been incidents when a communication failure resulted in war. An extreme example of a military disaster arising from miscommunication is perhaps the Battle of New Orleans, more than 100 years ago, I'm happy to say. But still, it's a lesson we need to remember. Over 1,500 soldiers were killed and wounded in a battle that took place between American forces and British forces after the Treaty of Ghent had been signed, effectively ending the war. In order to sustain peace through better communications, we need to transform the nature of the communications we have with others. According to the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the availability and suitability of communication and information media are essential prerequisites for empowering and enabling the people to express their views and opinions about significant development problems and to participate in the process of democratic transition, conflict resolution, and ultimately a peaceful society. So all the subjects which were suggested to me by Rotary International are linked to our struggle for peace and prosperity. We have to have both. We have to have peace, we have to have prosperity, because we are only human and we want to be prosperous. At the same time, we want to live in peace. We want to be at peace with ourselves and with the world in which we live. The main reason why I decided to come to speak here today was because the topic was about peace. And peace is what we want and need most for our country, that we may lead it forward to a prosperous future. And I know that many members of the Rotary International are business people, are those who can help us to build up a prosperous community. But I also know that you believe in ethical business, that you believe in service for self, that you believe that it is possible to be both ethical and prosperous. I want my country to be an ethical, prosperous nation and at peace, because both ethical values and prosperity will reign in our society. So my call to you is to help us to achieve such a goal. We can all help one another. You can help us by maintaining an awareness of what is going on in my country today. Not to be over-optimistic, but at the same time to recognize the potential that is there. We want to move forward. We want to be friends with everybody. We want to achieve national reconciliation in Burma. We want civilians to look upon the military as our defenders and our protectors and not as our oppressors, as they have done in the past. We want the kind of change that will enable all the ethnic communities of the country to feel, to know, to be confident that our nation is their true sanctuary, that their home is their sanctuary, and that we can all unite together to build the kind of land where we can all live in harmony and peace. So when you help us, which I'm sure you wish to do, please do not forget that we are a nation of many different ethnic nationalities, that we are a nation in need of healing, that we are a nation in need of national reconciliation. And if you keep an awareness of our needs, the help that you give us will be all that much more valuable. As we move forward into the We wish our friends to stay with us, to stay by us, that we may be able to repay their kindness one day by making our own contribution to the community of nations, to contribute towards peace and prosperity in the rest of the world. That is what we wish to do. For us, peace and prosperity is to be achieved not just for ourselves, but for the world in general. That by achieving peace and prosperity for ourselves, we may be able to add to peace and prosperity throughout the world. Please help us to achieve this end.